You are live.
Good evening. My name is Nadine Chen. Welcome to the Board of Appeals meeting for June 6, 2023. We are calling this meeting to order. I would like to inform everyone watching this meeting that we will be slightly delayed. Our vice chair, who will be chairing this meeting, will be arriving in about 10 minutes. Presently, we do not have a quorum, but when he does arrive, we will have a quorum. So I just ask everyone to sit tight. And once Mr. Zazali arrives, we will commence the meeting. Thank you.
There he is.
Hello, everybody.
Good evening, Christian.
Hi,
Good evening,
Christian.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for your patience. I'm sorry about that, but what happened?
So Christian, I opened the meeting and asked people to wait patiently for your arrival.
How nice.
So you are live
Yeah.
on camera.
Thank you. Did we do the preamble or anything, or we're just starting officially right this second?
I just called the meeting to order. We've not
Okay.
done a roll call.
Okay. Well, then we'll start off officially right now. Thank you for your patience, everybody. Today is this is the virtual Board of Appeals meeting for Tuesday, June 6, 2021. We are acting virtually under the authorization of the City of Annapolis Mayor and the Board of and the City Council. I'm acting chair, Christian Zazali, on behalf of Bob Gallagher, who is out this evening. We will go to our agenda as everybody had. Do the call the roll, please, first.
So Kimberly Consoli is not with us tonight, so I will do the honors for you all.
Okay.
Bob Gallagher is not present. Christian Zazali,
Here.
Nadine Sheen,
Present.
Robert Hector,
Here.
and Bob Gallagher. I said that right?
Yep.
Mike Walsh.
Michael Walsh.
Yes, Michael Walsh is also absent tonight.
Having 3 of the 5 members of the board present and requiring 3 for a quorum, we are correctly seated for the quorum, and we will authorize to do business. As a member of the board, review the agenda.
Yes.
Any questions
Yes.
or comments?
No,
Motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
I motion that it accept as agenda as approved.
Okay, and Jackie confirming that we're still operating on the agenda that was mailed in the packets with the 3 applications, 1 special exception and 2 variances.
That's correct.
Okay, very good.
I
we-
second the motion.
All right, good. The motion carries. We'll move forward with the appeal. I have a move approval of the minutes as our next item for May 17th. The draft order has members of the board that are present had a chance to review the minutes from 17th.
Yes,
Yes.
Do we have a motion to accept or amendments?
I motion to
I
accept
move-
the amendments as follows.
Okay. And a second?
Second.
All right, we have one
Say
way or the other.
amendments
It'll be
or
recorded.
minutes?
Yeah,
Minutes.
yes.
Yeah.
So we have approval
Minutes.
of, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved as submitted. Okay, new business. First case we have before us is special exception 2023-0004. Application by Annapolis City Marina Limited Partnership LLP, property owner for the non-maritime retail clothing located at 410 Severn Avenue. Who's presenting this case?
I am presenting the case.
All parties necessary to hear this case present?
Yes.
The applicant present? Which one's the applicant?
The applicant is the property owner, and representing the property owner tonight is John Arison is their consultant, and Mr. Gill and Mr. Bennett are and Jeff Turkin also are all representing the property. Although not advertised in this application because we didn't have all of the contact information, I do believe that there is a proposed tenant for the premises, and that is the Carrie Kelly.
Very good. Okay. All members of the public who are planning to provide testimony today, I need you to raise your right hand so the camera can see it. Do you affirm or attest or that the testimony you will provide here will be truthful under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Say I do.
I do.
Okay, thank you very much. Jackie, you may present the special exception from the
So
city.
this is a special exception for a retail business to be located at the Annapolis City Marina, which is zoned waterfront mixed maritime. And when the maritime regulations were redone as a result of the Maritime Task Force and new zoning was adopted, there was a provision added to that it impacted this property, which is zone WMM. I think I already said that, but that they could, if they provided a waterfront access to something that's called a waterfront access incentive and something else that's called a maritime trigger, they could be eligible to have additional non-maritime square footage that could include professional office as well as non-maritime retail. The non-maritime professional office is allowed as a permitted use. However, any additional non-maritime retail use requires special exception approval. And this application is under review for the required waterfront access incentive. And we expect that process to be completed before the special exception. And we've made it a condition of approval that the waterfront access incentive has to be in place before we would process any building permits for the non-maritime retail, but we feel pretty comfortable that we're just working through the somewhat complicated number system that goes with waterfront with this process. So this is one of the very few properties in the WMM zone that would be eligible to apply for additional space. One other that I know of at this point in time would be 222 Severn Avenue. But they have chosen not to exercise the option to move forward with adding additional non-maritime to their current tenant mix. That doesn't mean that they won't in the future. Use, it's
Got it.
only 1,000 square feet. It's a retail use. We reviewed it for its compliance with the special exception standards and really can find no way in which this would adversely impact the neighborhood or adjacent property owners or other tenants of the project, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. Short of any going straight to questions from the board, well, John, are you presenting on behalf of the applicant?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
My name is John.
What do you, go ahead, introduce yourself. Tell us what you think we need to know.
Thank you. I'm John Arison, Arison and Associates, 707 Glendon Avenue, Annapolis, 21403. This is a special exception application, the Annapolis City Marina, to establish a retail sales of non-maritime related goods in Building B, Suite 113. The property is zoned WMM. The actual use is going to be a women's clothing boutique. And a women's clothing, non-maritime retail goods under section 2148.040 table of uses is a special exception subject to standards. Now, before I get into my presentation, which I'll try to make as brief as possible, I'd like to introduce with us today, we have Gary Gill, who's the CEO of McKinsey Asset Management, who can answer questions directly related to Annapolis City Marina. Christopher Bennett, the Executive Vice President for McKinsey. He's oversees leasing operations at Annapolis City Marina. Jeff Turkins, the property manager, if you have questions about what happens there day to day. And Kerry Kelly, who's the owner of the, I think, Mason Mays store that's trying to open at Annapolis City Marina. Before I start, Ms. Kelly, would you just like to describe your store so the board has an idea what you're going to be doing there?
Sure. I am the owner of Mason Mays. It's a women's apparel boutique. It's primarily advanced contemporary women's clothing. We have apparel, accessories, and gifts. I currently have a location in Baltimore and am looking to expand my business into Annapolis.
Do you think that your store, now that you've been operating a store in another location, will have adverse impacts on surrounding properties?
I do not.
Thank you. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I'm looking forward to expanding into Annapolis.
Okay, next I'm going to turn to Mr. Gill. Ms. Kelly's other store is in another McKinsey property in Baltimore. So McKinsey has experience with having one of her stores on their property. So I'd like to call on Mr. Gill to talk about her store up in their property in North Baltimore.
Yes, we have a property called Lake Falls Village. It's a mixed-use property, and Mason
Yeah,
Mays.
Mr. Gill, can I just ask you to introduce yourself and your address?
Oh,
please,
sorry.
For the record.
Thank you. Gary Gill, through Mackenzie Asset Management LLC, I serve as the CEO, effectively the managing partner of Annapolis City Marina. So all owner decisions, leasing, ultimate leasing decisions, et cetera, I take care of on behalf of the partnership, of which I'm also a partner in the partnership, not just in my officer's role.
Okay, sorry, you can go back to your presentation about Miss Kelly's
Sure.
existing store.
Well, I mentioned Carrie has a store at Lake Falls Village, a mixed-use project that we have a different partnership, different ownership group, which is North Baltimore, just off of 83. And she's had the store there for a while, and it's a superb ladies boutique clothing store. Besides the fact that I know the use intimately, and so does occasionally my credit card. But I know Carrie's personal background and qualities, just small world. Her dad and I went to first grade through 12th grade together. It's the Baltimore Smaltimore thing, and she runs an outstanding operation. And I have no doubt this will be an asset to the community of Annapolis and Eastport. And in no fashion will it be a detriment to any aspect of the same.
Same question to you, Gary. Do you think that opening this store in Annapolis City Marina would have any negative impacts on the general public or surrounding properties, or be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other properties in the immediate vicinity? Gary?
I thought I said no. Can you hear me?
Gotcha.
Okay, I didn't hear that. Mr. Turkin's here in case you all have any questions about the day-to-day operations, and then Mr. Bennett's here in case you have questions about the actual leasing. From here, Mr. Chairman, do you want me to run through all the standards, or you just want me to all?
I mean, if you think there's anything that's not, it's articulated here in the 1 through A through G standards. I am curious about the percentage, though. What percentage of the floor area are you taking? If 55, not more than 55. What percentage is the proposal?
Well, this proposal is around 1% of the total.
1%.
1,000 feet out of a 77,000 square foot complex.
Okay.
This puts them slightly. It's complicated, Mr. Zuli. I mean, in the WMM zone, you get 30% maritime. Let's just call it by right. Anybody that has a building there can have 30% non-maritime. If you have a trigger, and the triggers are listed, you can get up to 45%. A fuel dock is one of the triggers. And Annapolis City Marina has a fuel dock, so that puts them up to 45% non-maritime. With this use, they'll be up around 47, I think, or 48%. Maybe Mr. Bennett has a better idea than I. But then they have what they call incentives. One of the incentives is if you can provide 150 parking spaces open to the general public, evenings and weekends, you get another 10% non-maritime, which means that you can have a total of 55% non-maritime. Annapolis City Marina is not at that percentage. What Ms. Rouse is talking about is working out the numbers. Annapolis City Marina has a 320 space parking garage. Some of those spaces are taken by Carroll's Creek or by the slips, and they wouldn't be available to the general public. But when you take those out, they easily have 150 spaces. So that entitles them to, once Ms. Rouse is satisfied with the numbers, and we're quite sure that she will be. We met last week. Then we have the trigger and the incentives, and we can move forward with non-maritime.
But
And just-
that was what Jackie was alluding to in her
Yes.
introduction. Okay, so Jackie, the condition, we can get into this a little later, but the condition of this application is that the triggers are met and the square footages are not exceeded. Is that
Yeah,
part of
we're
your?
just, finalizing numbers, one of the loose end pieces is the getting a recent floor plan for Carroll's Creek, and we have the 1983 floor plan. We know that it was remodeled in 2003, and we have not been able to locate a floor plan from the remodel. So we have to figure, and seating for food service businesses based on capacity. So we feel confident that this is all going to work out. We need to nail down the numbers so that we
Sure.
can figure out, there are a couple of other factors involved, but I feel pretty comfortable that we will get to that point sooner. rather
And the
than later.
uses, the authorized and approved uses and our use and occupancy certificates that are currently held by all the other tenants in the building are found to
Yes.
be current and valid and conforming in all respects.
That is what I have. That is true. I think that
We've had some cases where that wasn't necessarily true.
yes, that is absolutely true, that we have had cases like that, and we do require all the tenants to have use permits, but Lisa Menker, who's our zoning enforcement officer, has been working with Mr. Turkin on getting, this is a project that has had many different tenants over the years. So just sorting through all that and making sure that we all are on the same page with the numbers, the square footage numbers and the tenants has taken a little while, but I feel pretty comfortable that
Yeah,
that
that was
we're
where I was going. If
Right.
we're
don't-
being asked to affirm or approve a special exception
Mhm.
before the math is done, right, so to speak.
Right.
But
Well, it really just has to do, we have a valid use permit for Carroll's Creek. We just, for some reason, have not been able to, locate the 2003 floor plan, but Lisa has contacted. the liquor-
Jackie, let
the
me
liquor
ask
board
you
about
this way.
that.
Do you think there's any chance that they're anywhere
No.
near the 55%?
Well, I don't, it's not really the 55%. No, it's absolutely, they're nowhere near the 55%. And really what we're talking about with nailing down the numbers has to do with just nailing down the numbers on the parking spaces being 150 public spaces being available.
I see, yeah, because
tying up
that
loose
is the
ends.
extension.
No, we
of
are
the check.
nowhere near the 55%.
Okay, all right.
It's not an
Okay.
issue at all.
All right, the members of the board have read the application. But I'll give you the opportunity if you think there's anything in there that's worth highlighting or bringing to our attention further.
No, I was going to say, Mr. Zazuli, that I can either sit here and read what I submitted, which I'm sure you all would find quite fascinating,
Mhm.
or I can just proffer what I've given to you and say that would be my testimony, and just end by saying that this proposed special exception meets the standards for a special exception under 2164-550, and it meets all of the code requirements, and it meets the baseline trigger requirements for non-maritime. It meets the incentives, and it meets the general review criteria and findings required for the granting of a special exception.
Posted properly?
Yes, I have the affidavit of posting, the affidavit of notification, and a picture of the sign, which I provided to the Department of Planning and Zoning.
And we have received no public comments on the application.
You anticipated my next question.
I know that.
Okay, very good. Okay, I will open it up to the board. Any questions for the applicant or any of their witnesses?
Not for me.
Dr. Chen?
I just have a couple of questions. What is in the space now?
Sorry, Chris Bennett with Mackenzie. The space is currently vacant.
What was in there prior to?
Sorry, it was occupied by the Environmental Protection Agency's Chesapeake Bay program. It was one of the spaces that previously occupied by them.
Got it. And what are the projected hours for the boutique?
Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Okay. That's it, Christian.
Okay. Having anything else, John?
No, that ends our presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we will deliberate this at the end of the meeting tonight, assuming time allows, and you'll have a result, at least virtually, and whatever the decision, the paperwork will follow quickly behind. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank
you all
you.
very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you all.
Thank you, Jackie.
You're
going back,
welcome.
going back to our agenda, variance 2023-0006, variance application Tombstone Holding, 37% reduction, et cetera, for 32 Cornhill Street. Are all applicant and advisors and or witnesses present? Kim, is this yours or Jackie's?
This is mine.
Is your applicant here?
The applicant's architect is here, and I was anticipating, Mike, I thought the property owner was also going to be attending.
I do not see Tracy in the attendee list.
Okay, what are the people who, is Amy Windham here? She was here to testify on this application.
Okay, I just sent her the prompt. I, again, didn't have her on my list, so I just forgot. She
Okay,
should be on in a second.
okay, this is, okay, so
I
the,
see Amy. I see Amy's joined.
so Miss Wyndham owns the house next door to 32 Cornhill, and she did provide us with written comments today, which I forwarded to all of you. She's been out on vacation for the last 2 weeks, and then I was off this afternoon, so you did not get the comments till late in the afternoon, but I did talk to all of you, and I know that you all have gotten them and read them, and I also sent them to the applicant, to Mr. Ogle, who's the architect representing the property owner for this project. So this is,
Sorry, is the architect prepared to go as representing the applicant in the absence of the applicant here?
Yes,
Is that the plan? Okay.
so, okay.
Go ahead, I was gonna say, Ms. Windham, are you standing alone on your written testimony that we received both email and text, or are you gonna provide testimony here?
I'll provide a brief testimony.
Okay, can you turn your camera on so we can swear you in?
I'm trying to. There I am.
There you are. Okay, raise your right hand, please. You affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you will provide here will be the truth and solely the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right, Jackie, you may present the application.
So this is an application for an addition to a dwelling on Cornhill Street, and it requires a rear yard and a side yard variance. It's a relatively small lot, and the addition is actually fairly limited in size. It will also, subsequent to, if it is approved by the Board of Appeals, it will still also require approval by the Historic Preservation Commission. And they have not yet reviewed any aspect of the application. I don't believe they've even had a preliminary meeting on that, but I did explain to the applicant that if the HPC were to require changes to the application, that may mean they may have to come back to the Board of Appeals for modifications. So we're moving forward under those terms. It is a very, it's a difficult situation in the historic district on these very small lots where the houses are very close to each other in terms of adding any kind of square footage to a property. And this house is extremely small. We did review it. We did feel it met the standards based on what was submitted, and we're going to let Mr. Ogle explain to you how they believe it meets the standards.
Okay. Mr. Ogle?
yes, good evening. I'm Michael Ogle with ABS Architects, and I'm here to present the addition and project at 32 Cornhill. So 32 Cornhill is a 1850s two-story row home, wood frame, approximately 940 square feet or 470 square feet per floor. And the owners would like to have a little more living area to expand a second bedroom on the second floor. The house is 13 foot 6 inches wide on the inside, and it's difficult to make the rooms function without the addition. And the addition is modest in size. It is only taking up the area of a rear deck, which is 6 foot 4 inches out beyond the existing back wall of the existing house. And it is as wide as the rear of the house minus 2 step-ins to meet HPC guidelines. Open up the criteria. Excuse me a minute.
Are you trying to share? That was you.
I'm just trying to bring up the criteria letter.
Okay.
We have all that.
Okay.
You just want to proceed and
Do you want to share the plans?
Sure. If you can see, we have the site plan, C1, shows the addition to the rear. And we have the adjoining properties, the neighboring properties are outlined here. The property on the right, number 30, goes further back. And the property on the left, number 34, Miss Wyndham's property, is nearly in line, maybe a little bit beyond the existing back.
Are you know that you don't have any plans up on the screen, Mike?
We're following this plan though, right?
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So,
Okay, we're with
and,
you. We see what you're proposing.
So the deck is 6'4" by 13'4" wide, and we're planning to take over that area for the addition. So not to go beyond that, we're being conservative. We didn't take 8 feet as most builders would want to do, use up dimensions of construction materials. We cut it back to 6 feet to limit the impact of neighboring properties. If you can see in the exhibit 4, we have the rear yards or exhibit 3, I'm sorry. We have the rear yards are pretty shallow. A lot of the properties along that street have rear yard additions that bump out. And we took an average of those setbacks, which was 18'3", and we're approximately 19 feet. So we're beyond the average for the proposed addition.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
I have a question. So is this property rented at any time? Oops.
No, this property is, we're planning to make this the home of the owner. Of course, after they renovate it. They're not setting up permanent residency here until the construction is finished.
So they will be permanent residents when the construction is finished?
I believe so.
Do you believe that because they told you that, or you believe that because you're just making that assumption?
We have not had a discussion about that, but they seem to want to personalize the home to stay there for as a living arrangement. I believe the Tracy has family in town.
Well, we don't know who Tracy is because we only see the owner as listed as
Tombstone,
Tombstone Holdings.
Tombstone Holding Foreign LLC.
Right.
So, oh, I see Tracy Deckman. I guess that's the owner agent for, so she happens to also be the owner, is what you're suggesting. Maybe, I don't know.
we
Well,
believe that she's the principal for we've been told she's the principal for Tombstone Holdings.
Is
I
she the
didn't include-
resident, Jackie?
I don't know. The applicant, the property owner is listed as Tombstone Holdings LLC in SDAT. And that's how we advertise properties based on who
Right.
the listed owner is.
Hmm. I think it's unfortunate the applicant is not on this, attending this meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it prevents us from doing our business, but it is unfortunate. We do like to ask the benefit of speaking directly to the applicant.
Right.
I have a question for Mr. Ogle.
Go ahead.
Where's the applicant residing now?
I do not know. I am not sure.
Okay.
Okay,
Christian, I do have a question for Jackie.
Mhm.
by the way,
Jackie, is the addition going to impede the light in any way for the neighbors?
Well, our initial analysis, we looked at actually was the average rear yard setbacks for the block, and it did not seem that this addition would be, and I think I also looked at the outside elevation of so on the one side at 30 Cornhill, that structure goes far out beyond this structure to a rear yard. That's a larger lot, but on the left side, which is 34 Cornhill, we did not see that there aren't any windows on that side of the building. Of course, both of those buildings are constructed right up to the property lines. And until today, we had not had any feedback from any of the adjacent property owners. We do believe that we had advised the architect that it's always a good idea in situations like this where the dwellings are so close together that they speak to the adjacent property owner and advise them, although not a code requirement that you do that. We always advise people that they should talk to their neighbors if they're proposing an addition that's in such close proximity to an adjacent dwelling. And we can't, I don't know the answer to that question. Beckman is not here, so to ask her directly.
I know Tracy was in the house last week and maybe the week before, I don't know. Miss Wyndham said she was out of town for the past couple of weeks. So maybe they just missed each other. Tracy
Right.
was invited This was a last minute letter that came to the board. We just received this afternoon late. And we tried to get Tracy to join the meeting. I attempted very frantically to get her and Madeline and everybody coordinated, but it looks like it didn't work, unfortunately.
Christian, I would suggest that probably if you're gonna open it up to public testimony, Ms. Wyndham does own the adjacent property.
Yes, I understand. I was gonna go with that next. So welcome, Miss Wyndham. You're afforded the opportunity to tell us anything you want to know about this. how you
And
feel
can
on
we
this application.
remove the screen sharing,
Yes,
Christian?
please. Do I get to do that? How do I do that?
No, not you, Mr. Uncle. Thank you.
I'm not finding my staff report for this application. I see. Oh, I found it. Never mind. I came in hot. Okay, you can tell us what we need, whatever you want to tell us, Ms. Wyndham.
Great. Thank you. And I apologize for being kind of late to this conversation. Like I actually was traveling for the past 2 weeks for my daughter's graduation, first 2-week vacation I've had in several years. And so I got home late last night and I saw the posting for the hearing, and that was the first I'd heard of it. The neighbors hadn't mentioned it to me, even though obviously this has been in the plannings for some time. I I can answer a few from my perspective. They live in Florida. The wife is from Severna Park, and so she does have family here. But he owns a business in Florida, and they've been back and forth. And obviously, if they're planning to do a renovation, maybe that's why they haven't been here. But from what they told me when they moved in, which is maybe a year or two ago, and their plans could have changed. What they told me was that their plan was to continue to go back and forth between Annapolis and Florida. And the reason they bought the house here in Annapolis is because she has family in Severna Park. It might have changed. I can't speak for them. But that's my understanding. Their cars still have Florida plates. They're not, registered here. So in terms of that, I don't think there's a residence requirement, but obviously there's a lot of Airbnbs going up on the street. I'm a full-time resident, my only residence. So, they are here. They've had opportunities to talk to me if they felt like, they wanted to engage in that conversation, but that's obviously that's their choice. What I'll say is that, so first, just my background is my backyard. This is my space here. We spend a lot of time in the space. So the problem that this is going to cause for me is that this is going to go right up against my fence on this side. And it's true, it doesn't go way far out, but it goes 6 feet out, right against the fence. There's no offset on the side. So it's it's a 2-story structure right up against, the property line. And I do anticipate that this is going to seriously kind of impede. It's going to block my sunlight. It's going to block my view. It's definitely going to interfere with like my ability to use the space in my backyard and my patio. I put this brick patio in a couple of years ago, and I've really, I have my herbs going back here. I have tried, an attempt at a pollinator garden back there. So I really have spent a lot of time working on the space, and I asked my daughters to quiet down. They're eating dinner back there now. So this is really important space for me, and it's really important to my enjoyment of this home. So I was very surprised and shocked to hear that they were planning to do an addition, which is going to go 2 stories up over, and it is absolutely going to block my view. My use of the backyard is going to block the sunlight. In terms of your criteria, I don't really understand. Never, not accustomed to speaking at these types of meetings. But, I looked at the criteria. I don't really understand what it means to be a hardship, but, they bought the house knowing that it was small, knowing that it's hard to do an addition. I don't know if their original plan was to do an addition or if they just started realizing how, that they weren't able to use the house as much as they wanted to, but I don't know how not planning very well, like really qualifies as a hardship, but that's, maybe I just don't understand kind of what that means.
Well,
In terms of,
a hardship might be something like they bought a piece of property, then they went through the trouble to subdivide it and sold off half the property, and
Mhm.
then came back and asked for a rear yard setback. That would be a hardship of their own creating.
right,
Okay, they did not create this hardship. The lot size was laid out in 1850.
Right. but they did, I understand, they did buy
Yeah.
the house knowing what
Sure,
the,
and
what
and
the,
there
what
are
the requirements are.
hundreds and
And,
hundreds of people who buy houses and come to realize that they want it a little differently than the way they bought it, and they try to go through the process by right or by variance to do that, and that's why we're here tonight.
right, so, and I understand that, it is a small house,
Yeah.
and I can understand them wanting to enlarge it, but, from that perspective, they're trying to enlarge theirs, like at my expense. I bought my property knowing all the dimensions of it, knowing what I was gonna get into. Would I like my house to be bigger? Yeah, I would, but, this is what, made sense for me when I purchased my house, so. Anyway, that's really it. This is really, one of the main selling features of my house is this backyard space and also the second story window. It's gonna come out, so it is gonna be in the view of, in the view of my the second floor window there. Probably not too much, but the main impact is on the patio space and the backyard space. And I am concerned that that will impact my property value, because the patio is, it is a major selling point of my house. If I decide that I do want to move out of here, this addition is really going to kind of cut in to and block, like literally block it, literally is going to overshadow portions of my yard, which is, reduces the quality of my life. Not my quality of life's great, but it definitely will interfere with how I'm able to use my house and my space, and potentially my property value down the line.
Can I
Mr.
respond briefly?
Yes, Mr. Ogot, you are free to respond
Sure.
with whatever facts or opinions you think will help us.
I'd just like to share this photograph. Can you see this photograph of the back of the house?
Mhm.
So there's a shadow line here. It faces nearly north, almost directly north. And you can see the shadow line. The sunlight is bright here, and then the shadow of the neighboring property number 32.
Right.
Well, her own house is in complete shadow from her own house right here. You can see it. So there is not going to be a whole lot of sunlight on the north side anyway. You can just look at this picture and see that the whole back of the house is in shadow, but not from number 32, from her own house.
And does this white?
Can I respond to that? Because
Yes, let me ask you a
shadowing in
question.
my backyard depends on the time of day. So basically what you're talking about is that fence there, 6 feet, and I don't know if you can see my cursor. I guess you probably can't see my cursor on this, but that fence, you're basically taking the 6 feet of fence and taking it all the way up to the roof line of that house. And
But
my yard
where
is
the white
correct.
post is that correct? It's where this
That's
white.
right.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
right. Right where this newel is where the addition will have its corner facing adjacent to Miss Wyndham's property.
Yeah, that's 6 feet. 6 feet doesn't look, it only looks like a few slats there, but at the angle, it's really kind of hard to see how far, like, it's hard to see like how that, I mean, I could go out and show you in the backyard.
Miss Wyndham, how
Mhm.
many hours of the day do you have sunlight in your backyard?
It rotates, I mean, and it depends on the time of the year. You can see when this picture's, sorry, this is the picture. There's, I took this in the evening. So, I've got, I get the good mornings, I get morning sun up here, and then it recedes throughout the day. And yes, obviously I have shutters from my own house, but I don't want the additional, like feeling closed in on the side.
How many hours of the day do you have sunlight in your backyard?
I don't think she's, I mean.
I mean, I just learned about this last night. If I could, I mean, I have sunlight in the back of the yard most of the day. And then it recedes. I
Sunlight,
guess I can tell you where these flowers are blooming here.
Mr. Ogle,
Yes,
do you have the drawings up in CAD or PDF on your?
yes, I can share those with you.
No, my question is, if you plot the line of the proposed building addition and we're in the center of the window, the bay window, I assume is yours, is that right?
Mhm.
What angle off of Urban 90 does the 6 foot get? It's steep, much steeper than 45. I'm just doing it by eye myself.
Or are we talking in plan view?
Yeah, plan view. If I was to plot, assuming the back of the adjacent property, how steep of an angle does the 6 foot create encroachment onto the looking to the right? I mean, if you.
Yes. I think the
I think
best exhibit is the C1,
Yep, I'm looking at it. Yep. I mean, to me, it looks like it might be about a 50. I don't know.
yes, if you took an angle directly back from corner to corner, is that what you're asking?
From center of building to proposed corner.
Center
of
to
proposed
center.
building.
Oh, yeah, center to center is more like a 30-degree angle.
Or 70, depending on your perspective. Right. Okay. So, okay, thank you. Does anybody have any other questions?
Sir,
Robert, Ms. Chen?
no, sir, no, sir.
Mr. Ogle, is there anything else we need to do? Jackie, does the planning department have a recommendation or conditions associated with this?
We had recommended approval on this based on the fact that, we looked at the average rear yard setbacks for all of these substandard lots along here and felt this was fairly consistent.
Any special requirements, conditions to the application that you need to make the applicant aware of?
Just that they will have to get Historic Preservation Commission approval and a building permit, and that process has yet to be undertaken.
Understood. Okay. Hearing no other comments or entering of evidence, we'll take this under advisement. We have all the exhibits correct and proper. Nothing else was added, correct? And other than her letter, we'll enter that as an additional exhibit.
I believe that Mr. Ogle has a correction to make to the numbering on one of the pages of the application
Okay.
that he texted us about late in the afternoon.
2 of the sheets were labeled number 4, and I had sent over a revised set.
It was too late in the day to
Drawing
send
sheets?
out. So
Or
you need
where-
to tell them which page is mismarked.
Yes,
One of 1, 2.
it is, A4, there are 2 A4s. So
Oh, contractors everywhere are squirming. Okay.
So I adjusted that and resent a corrected drawing set to Jack.
So does everything bump out one and we now end with A12?
We still end with A11. So,
Oh, we got. some
Second
spare.
A4 needs to be renumbered to A5, I would assume. Is
Well,
that
we have an
correct?
A5.
we have an A5.
And we don't have an A7 is what we don't have.
yeah, so I fixed the set and.
Okay, it's academic. We appreciate your attention to detail, but it doesn't change the application.
No, there were no additional drawings.
Okay. All right, thank you. We will deliberate this application at the end of the hearing, and you're welcome to stay on, or you could just pop back in a little later on.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Our next application, number 3, is for a variance as well. Variance application by Brandy Martin Handback for a reduction in front yard setback, et cetera, et cetera. Variance 2021006. Ms. Burke, are you representing this?
Yes, this one's me.
Okay, are your parties all present and accounted for?
Yes, I believe they are.
Were they all present for the affidavit or the affirmation of truth telling? They swear them in?
Yes.
They were all sworn in? You guys
Oh,
all
they
sworn?
weren't. You have to swear them in now.
Okay, if you want to speak here before this board, raise your right hand, affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you provide here shall be the truth. I do.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Ms. Burke, the floor is yours.
Okay, this is variance application 2021-006 for 605 Creekview Avenue. The owners are proposing a new detached garage, which is technically within their front and side yard setbacks. They are using the existing foundation of the garage that they have to rebuild. I should start by saying Creekview Avenue divides their property. So this makes all the properties along Creekview Avenue unique, whereas they have, I guess, two front yards in a sense with the division of Creekview Avenue. So they're asking for the proposed front yard setback would be 0.83 feet instead of 30 feet. And the proposed side yard setback would be 1.89 feet. And that is a typo. The required yard is 6 feet, but because of the structure's height, it should actually be 9 feet that they're asking relief from, but they're using the existing concrete pad. So the setbacks that are existing are also the same as proposed. We didn't have any neighborhood comments. The sign was posted properly and all the correct neighbors were notified. And I know that Mr. Dales would like to speak to
All right,
this.
Mr. Dales. Can we agree on what the front and the back of this building is? Is the south elevation the back or the front? Let's just start with that.
So the south elevation, and I can be
I'm
corrected
sorry,
if I'm wrong, is the front.
whichever one you want. The east elevation, I guess, what is east? Is that front or back?
I'm the one with the windows, I would assume is the front, that is, and Alan can correct me if I'm wrong, is the one that's facing Creekview Avenue, and the entrance is the east. Right, Alan? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, the south elevation faces the rear yard of the property, but the entrance to the garage itself is on the east elevation. So the front of the structure and the front of the lot are not the same.
Right. So this is important because of our height restriction is measured from where? The front, the lowest, the front.
Right, which I think is the same, that front bottom corner of the east elevation is the 8
But the
point.
front of the property is the north elevation. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Oh,
And under the code, that would be the front of the building.
Right. So
Regardless of
I
where
just
the
want to,
door of the
make
building
sure.
is.
So at 20, so does the math survive? Does the request for relief survive if the front of the building is the north elevation with the current heights?
Yes, because the grade around the existing structure is almost perfectly flat. There's very little grade change around the perimeter of the building.
Okay,
Height
good answer.
from grade to ridge on all sides is substantially
Nominally the same. Okay,
correct.
good answer. And we can now proceed, never having to speak of that again.
Well, thank you for getting that cleared up right off the bat, Mr. Chairman. We're going to try to keep our testimony brief. You have an excellent staff report on this. I think that addresses the variance criteria thoroughly. We provide our own statement. The testimony we're going to give here is just some of the key points on the uniqueness of this property as that relates to the variance standards and the reasonable use that would be denied if the regulations were strictly applied, which goes to hardship. And so I'll ask Ms. Hambeck to speak first, just to tell you what this use is and tell you a little bit about our property. And then we'll have Mr. Cook provide some of the details of the existing structure, proposed structure, and the variance and sort of the use as it relates to these structures and why it needs to be where it is on this property. So that said, Ms. Hambeck, could you please unmute yourself? And I will ask just a few questions. So Ms. Hambeck, could you just start off by giving your name and address to the board for the record?
Yes, my name is Brandy Handback. My husband, Martin Handback, is also on the call, and we are the owners who reside at 605 Creek Avenue in Eastport.
And can you give the board a little bit of context for where your property sits within the Eastport community?
Sure, it fronts onto Creekview Avenue, a private gravel road that separates the house from the garages on that street, and the back of the house is on Back Creek.
Okay, thank you very much. And can you briefly describe the need that you have for this second story on the garage? What is it that you want to put there?
Yes, we're looking to establish a private workspace primarily for my use and hopefully a small area for exercise use. We do not have a basement and we cannot have a basement given our location. So because of that, there really is no private quiet space for me to be able to work, and I'd like to be able to exercise as well.
Okay, so this space needs to be away from the main living space.
Yes.
Why is it that you there aren't other locations on your property that you could locate this use?
Because of the floodplains, I believe many of the other houses on our street even are able to have at least a crawl space and or a basement. We have neither, and because of the critical areas and the floodplain on our property, we have neither and are really not able to construct anything on the house side. So the garage space is really the only option for this use.
As we've discussed what uniqueness means for a variance, that's really what are the characteristics of the property that combine to have a unique effect on this property that's different than all the other properties in the zone. There may be a few others that are similar, but generally not a commonly shared impact from the zoning regulations. I think the staff report listed a few, and you've reviewed that staff report, right, Ms. Hambeck?
Yes.
So the staff report noted what we've already talked about, that it's a unique condition for a Creekview to split all the properties as a private road running right through the middle of all these parcels. So your primary structure's on one side and the accessories on the other, is that correct?
Yes.
The other unique factor that was mentioned here is that these properties also happen to be in the critical areas, so that makes it makes it challenging to develop anything on the water side of your property. Is that correct?
Correct.
Right. And then I believe that what may not have been mentioned in the staff report you've alluded to here is that your property, unlike some of the others on the street, also has significant amount of its area in the floodplain, preventing the structure that was constructed somewhat recently within the last 30 years from having been built with a garage. Is that right?
Yes. It has no basement, right, or crawl space under the house.
Okay. And if you had that kind of a space or more room on your property elsewhere to build, you might do an addition or locate this use in your basement. Is that right?
Correct.
And your neighbors who have those spaces and folks you know in Eastport generally, are you aware that others have this use in their properties?
Yes. And in one particular case, over their garage on our street.
Okay. Well, thank you. And can you describe your understanding of the reasons why the second story of the garage is the needed location from what you've been told by Mr. Cook, your architect?
Why it's what?
Why that's the needed location from the architect's point of view? We'll have him speak in a moment, but you've chosen to locate it here because
it's really just because it's a quiet space and the floor plan of our home, it's not conducive to a quiet private home office space to work.
Okay, thank you for giving us your perspective on this. I think it's always important for the board members to hear from the owners as to why this reasonable use that you're requesting is important to you. And then Mr. Cook and I will help to explain why it would be denied if these regulations were strictly applied. Thank you, Ms. Hambeck. And Mr. Cook, if you could unmute. And could you just start with stating your name, address, and your professional qualifications for the board, for the record?
Sure. I'm Alan Cook. My work address is 1 Melvin Avenue, Annapolis, Maryland, 21401. Work at Purple Cherry Architects. and I am an associate architect there. I've practiced in Annapolis in residential practice for 24 years.
And of course, you're familiar with, but have also reviewed for this case, the requirements for a variance and the regulations for building code, fire code, ADA. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm very familiar with this project.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cook. And if you could share your screen to bring up the site plan drawings and architectural drawings, I'd like to have them for you to refer to for these next couple of questions.
Sure.
Now, Mr. Cook, if you could just begin with the existing conditions and just, show for anyone watching and show for the board, just orient them, describe the existing conditions for both the primary and accessory structure that we're talking about here.
Sure. So, sorry, I'll expand my screen here. The Back Creek is on the right of the document. You can see the zoning setback, water yard setback cutting through here.
Yeah, Mr. Cook, are you seeing the same thing that I'm seeing? It's, I see sort of like half of a plan sheet, sort of seems to be cut off on the plan east side, that where the water would be. Are others?
Yeah, he needs to do full size.
Yep.
You up.
Alan, I think it might just be the window that you're sharing is sort of is cut in half.
Don't, let me try to reshare.
If it's a problem, I might be able to get Ms. Neal to share her screen.
How's that?
There we go. That's great. Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. So as I was saying, the water is to the right. The zoning setback cuts through at a diagonal here, essentially at the waterfront face of the existing house. The existing two-story home essentially fills the width of the site. It's a fairly narrow lot. And then there's a small front yard before we get to the Creekview Avenue cutting across. So there's very little developable land anywhere on the site apart from the small 20-foot wide parcel to the north of Creekview Avenue, where the existing the existing single-story garage is located.
From a zoning analysis point of view, having this private road cut through the parcel essentially creates two front yards with two front yard setbacks on either side of the road, so that the accessory structure, is located within the existing accessory structure is located within a front yard setback, as is the primary structure. Is that right?
Well, I believe there's just one 30-foot setback, but it encompasses the entire area north of Creekview Avenue. So that area is entirely there.
The existing structure is well within the setback because of the way that the road splits the properties, and we're not seeking to increase that distance or increase that encroachment into the setback, are we?
No, we're not changing any of the footprint dimensions or the either front or side yard setbacks of the existing structure. We're building directly over the existing footprint.
So essentially what we're asking you to do is just to increase the height of the structure that's there up slightly. By how much are we increasing that height?
Exactly right. We're increasing it by just over 4 feet.
Okay, and with that, why don't you just walk the board through the proposed changes and describe the existing and proposed structures for them.
Okay. We produced and submitted these diagrams, which show the existing line with the proposed addition of an increased roof height and the dormer in the gray and dashed lines here. So what you see as the siding and more typical architectural drawing is the existing structure. The proposed is then superimposed on top of that. So that gives you a sense of the scale of the existing structure and the proposed structure. And then in floor plan, we just have a small single car garage on the lower level with an entrance stair up to provide access to the second story space. The second story is essentially one small room to act as a studio and gym with a powder room attached to it. So the structure is quite small in its footprint. We have endeavored to reduce the apparent mass of the structure as much as possible while maintaining its functional characteristics that are necessary to work for the clients. As part of the application process, we did receive commentary from the neighborhood association, and as a result of that, we reduced the area of the second story. We pulled the 2 dormer walls in on the sides of the building to reduce that amount of mass and the apparent size of the structure. So we have tried to accomplish what we need to accomplish for the owners in as minimally, as minimal change as possible from the existing condition.
And Mr. Cook, could you go back to the floor plan view? Because I want to just show the board some of the challenges that you've skillfully navigated here with this very tight floor area. You know, with the location of the stair being where it was, and with working with such a small space, when you moved and reduced the massing by reducing the dormer, what was the effect and what were the challenges there to accommodate these reasonable uses in this space?
Well, there was an access challenge in terms of getting into the building and rising up the stair. And if you look at the first floor plan on the right side, you can see there's a vestibule immediately upon entrance, which then narrows to create a stair. That narrowing was necessary for that stair to align with the reduction in the dormer mass as it rose up. So you can see then on the second floor, the stair rises up along that exterior wall and enters this open studio and gym space up above. Just overall, the space is pretty small. It's, you know, around 9 by 11 feet, 9 feet by 11 feet in area for the main space. And it's really just one room and a small powder room attached to it.
Mm-hmm. So basically any further reductions would have started eliminating the essential elements of this space. Is that right?
Absolutely. It's pretty minimal as it is.
Got it. Okay, let's go back to that letter from the neighborhood association that you referred to. That letter raised a few points. I think it recognized the reduction and the change into the dormer that was made after receiving comments. But I believe there was a misunderstanding on the association's part as to the height regulation. Could you please just discuss the compliance with this structure with the height provisions in 2150-050?
Sure, I'd be glad to. I think it's funny, Mr. Arison in the earlier case was referring to the complexity of some of the aspects of the city code. And I think that may have been part of the confusion on the part of the committee here. One of their statements was that the proposed structure does not comply with code in terms of eave height and ridge height.
And I'm sorry, Alan, it might just be helpful on this to go to the elevations to sort of illustrate what we're talking about here.
Sure.
Thank you. Sorry.
So their, I believe, misunderstanding that they stated in their letter was that the eave height must be 8 feet and the ridge height must be 16 feet. However, in the code, there are a couple of exceptions available to provide relief to those tabular values. The first is simply by increasing the setback of the structure from the minimum required setbacks. And so as Ms. Burke in her analysis for the city noted, at 19 feet, we would simply be required to increase the side setbacks by 3 feet from the base tabular value of 6 feet. So the structure is permittable with the eave height and ridge height as proposed. It simply changes the variance request slightly from, we're requesting relief from a 9-foot setback rather than from a 6-foot setback.
And that is sort of the primary nature of the variance we're seeking is because of the addition of the second floor height, we had to seek a variance here. Is that right?
That's correct. Since we're reconstructing this structure on its existing footprint, and the entire existing footprint is within the front yard setback, that requires us to obtain a variance.
And isn't it also true that the height is not a strict requirement if the zoning director feels that the purpose of the zoning ordinance is met by the height proposed?
That's correct. That's another one of the avenues for obtaining relief from the tabular height limit.
So in summary, that height regulation or restriction is not a hard and fast restriction. There are several different ways in which that can be exceeded. One of which is the variance. The other way is the subjective approval from planning and zoning. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, and there were a couple of other statements in that ECA letter that we just wanted to address, and hopefully if anyone from ECA is watching, this will clear some things up. But we started to be concerned that perhaps they hadn't seen the revised plans where we had clouded some of the changes made. Would you just touch on some of the other points in the ECA letter that we thought reflected a misunderstanding of the application?
Sure. Well, the first one was they did recognize that the dormer had been pulled in on at least one side of the structure. In fact, we pulled it in on both sides equally. The second was there were a couple of recommendations that the ECA made, which we did evaluate and ultimately opt not to move forward with. One of those was reducing the plate height of the dormer itself. Doing that would have substantially impacted the feasibility of that space and really would have reduced the ceiling height beyond what would make the structure feasible. The second was more of, in my opinion, an aesthetic suggestion, which was to drop the roof of the dormer below the main ridge in a similar kind of way that would increase the complexity of the roof framing necessary for the structure and would impact the height limit or the space available inside that space. And so we ultimately decided not to do those two. But I think those were kind of the main things. And then if it was 100% understood that the clouds here actually identified which of the changes were made from this submission.
Thank you. And a lot of that relates to simply the bulk regulations that aren't directly the variance that we're seeking, but I think it's important to go through those. And there was one other comment in the ACA letter that we discussed that may just be a semantics difference, but I think there was a comment that the massing hadn't been reduced, but in fact, that reduction to the dormer on both sides is a reduction to massing, wouldn't you say?
I would, yes, that's my opinion.
Thank you.
I think there are some more subtleties that might play into that. As a result of moving the dormer walls in, we also reduce the apparent height of the dormer itself because more of the dormer wall is concealed behind this low roof that cuts through. And then as a result of that, the windows actually become smaller, which does have an impact on the scale of the building and the perceived size of that dormer as it rises up above the low eave line.
Thank you. And I think I'm going to move to the standards on hardship and uniqueness here. But before I do, because you're talking about the perceived scale and the actual massing, would you just give your opinion about how well this fits in with other structures on the block and why it's your opinion that this is compatible with the street and the neighborhood generally?
Yeah, so starting generally, there are all kinds of examples of detached accessory structures in Eastport near this house and in a wider sense along, throughout Eastport, throughout the R2NC zone. Small accessory structures are very much in character with the neighborhood generally. And then this street is highly regular, I would say, in its disposition of the primary structures on the waterfront side of the lots, the accessory structures separated across the private road along the north side of the lot. So this is not by any means the largest one of these structures. It's in keeping in terms of its footprint size. It's generally of the size, the height of many of the other structures along here. So in my opinion, there's nothing exceptional about the requests that we're making or anything that really violates the established pattern of development.
And in fact, there are other similar two-story garages on Creekview Avenue as well as other parts of Eastport, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. All right, so Ms. Heimbach touched on this, but if you could just explain why, from an architectural design point of view, you would locate this use in the accessory structure. Why is it important that it be located in a basement or a separate space away from the living area?
Well, I think I've had lots and lots of clients in Eastport and in other areas of Annapolis, as well as further afield, who feel the need to have some separation of their workspace from their living space, whether that's due to acoustic separation needs, if they're on Zoom calls like this one and they don't have a place to get away, whether the house, as Ms. Heimbach testified, is a pretty open plan and doesn't lend itself to a good separation for that, or even if it's just, for exercise use that somebody wants to have a bit of privacy apart from the rest of the family. That type of space is very often separated, as you say, in a basement, in an accessory structure, a separate thing like this, occasionally in an addition on the side of the house, which isn't really an option here. So it's very common for people to want to have this type of space isolated to a greater or lesser extent from their primary living areas.
Well, and this property is not able to accommodate a basement because of some of the unique factors or the factors which uniquely affect this property, but that would have been another potential place for this type of use, correct?
Yeah, in a lot of houses that works out really well. This house didn't have a basement as it was originally constructed. It does not lend itself to adding a basement at this point. The water table is high here. The flood zone is present on the lot. You know, the risk of a flood getting into a basement would be not advisable. So this is really the only opportunity to have a space with that kind of separation apart from the primary dwelling.
So really, because of the location of this property in the critical area, because of the floodplains effect, and because of the splitting of the property by Creekview, those unique factors really mean that there's no other opportunity for this reasonable use. And so if the variance weren't granted, then the reasonable use would be denied, correct?
That's correct. There's no other opportunity. And I would submit, even if this property, or even if this structure were moved to the opposite side of Creekview Avenue and placed adjacent in front of the primary structure, which is literally the only other possible place for it to go, that would be a much greater violation of the pattern of development of this block particularly.
And would equally require a variance. So really there's the definition of hardship is the denial of a reasonable use by strict application of these regulations. And I think that's what you've laid out here. So thank you very much. And would you just confirm that all these proposed changes meet building code and fire code and ADA requirements and will have to obtain a building permit?
Yes, of course. We've already received the first round of comments as part of the site design plan review, and we've responded that we will address all of those at the building permit approval process. So.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Cook. And Mr. Chairman, we'll rest our case there and take any questions you may have.
Okay, stop sharing, Alan. Thanks. Any questions from the board for any of the presenters?
No, sir.
Mr. Dales or Alan? Dr. Chen?
No, I appreciate the explanation about the ECA letter.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Back to you, Ms. Burke, for conclusions. Or do we have any public wishing to testify here tonight on behalf or against this application? Bill Chapman, I don't know who you are, but your hand is raised. Can the admin?
I just sent him the prompt. I also think that Kim, who I sent a prompt to earlier, is for this agenda item, but I'm gonna send it again.
See some names that I recognize and some others that I don't. Can we get cameras on and unmuted so we can see if the public wants to provide testimony?
No.
I don't want to deny anybody, but now I'm getting an echo.
This is Bill Chapman. Can you hear me?
I can. Mr. Chapman, you wish to provide testimony here tonight?
Yes, I do.
All right. Can you raise your right hand, please? Do you affirm on a penalty of perjury the testimony you provided here is the truth?
I do.
Okay. Hold on just one second. Kim, do we have a list, or does anybody or anybody, or are we just going to do this sort of?
Sorry, my connection went bad. I couldn't hear anything. You all were frozen for the last 5 minutes. If you asked me a question, I apologize.
Yeah, I just was asking if we have public testimony list for this application.
We did not have anybody that wished to testify other than the property owner and the attorney and architect.
Okay, well, there are people here that are who are joined who wish to provide testimony. I'm inclined to let them.
That's fine with me.
Okay. Mr. Chapman, you've been sworn in. You can testify.
Yes, I live at 605A Creekview Avenue, so I'm the immediate abutter. Both houses were built at exactly the same time. On my garage is shown in those drawings. A similar addition was placed at 607 Creekview Avenue several years ago and has presented no problem for us in the neighborhood. And I'm fully supportive of the Handbach's request for this variance.
Thank you. Short and sweet. Anybody else? Mr. Bornstein, Ms. Potter member, Pope Kim?
Yeah, this is Kim Potember. I don't know if my video's working though.
It is not,
I don't know how to make it work.
nor do I. We can take your, I can take your audio, right? You affirm that you're both raising your hand. There you are. You did it.
Okay,
You affirm the testimony you provided you under penalty of perjury shall be the truth.
yes.
All right. Tell us what we need to know.
This is Kim Potember and I'm at 603 Creekview Avenue, neighbors on the other side of the Handbachs. And Dan Bornstein lives in this house as well. And we just wanted to say that we are totally in support of the variances being requested. It's the way the street is laid out. It makes perfect sense. And it just will continue the existing layout.
Okay, Mr. Bornstein, you affirm that Kim speaks on your behalf? Dan's a friend of mine. That's the only reason I'm prompting.
Yes.
Okay, full disclosure. There you go. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, back to you, Kim, for closing remarks. You're not.
The city is recommending approval of this variance. We think that all the standards have been satisfied. This is a unique situation. And we're recommending support of it.
Any conditions the applicant had to be aware of, or?
Just the height restriction that I put on the application, only because apparently, I believe next door, there was a height issue where the garage was built too high and they had to go back and ask for another variance for the height. And I know that was a concern with the Eastport Civic Association. So that's why we put the variance of the maximum height of the 19 feet, 1 inch.
Yep, I appreciate that. And thus we opened this with a small little exercise in elevations. Thank you. All right, hearing no other requests for testimony or admission of evidence, we will close this application and go on with our agenda. Thank you all for joining. You're welcome to stick around. We'll move through the deliberation in the order of the agenda, and you guys will be third.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Okay. We'll start back off with our special exception for the non-maritime use of some indeterminate percentage of the property. Anybody would want to start deliberation on this one? As ranking new senior member, I will look to you, Dr. Chan, to start discussion. Although in the past, we have also had made it short and sweet. If you feel there's something worth mentioning, and we'll take it. Can we hear you? You're muted, Jack, Nadine.
You lost Mr.
Sorry.
Zach still here?
I
We
don't see Mr. Hector.
Oh,
He's got
yeah.
his hand
Sorry,
raised.
I think I accidentally put him back to the attendee list because all the names move around when I click on them. I'm admitting him now.
There he is.
He looks
Handsome.
really different. He went and changed.
He looks really different.
He does. He's less of a Ravens enthusiast.
Okay, no, I'm a diehard Ravens fan. Okay.
Change artist.
Okay, all right. So we were just, Robert, we're just opening up discussion on the non-maritime clothing store.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have no concerns about this application and I would move to approve it.
Okay, discussion? None? Second?
Second.
Okay, Nadine, make your motion to approve the special exception.
I move to approve special exception SE 2023-0004 for non-maritime use. That it meets all of the requirements for a special exception, and in view of the evidence given in testimony and in the staff report, I move to grant this special exception.
Second,
Second.
all in favor of approving the special exception?
Aye.
Aye.
So granted. All right, our next one, variance 2023-0006. This is the property reduction for the rear yard, a 6.5 foot addition to the back of the house on Cornhill. I think it's Cornhill, yes? 32 Cornhill. Okay, any discussion or deliberation? I mean, I'll start with this one. Well, I am sympathetic to the adjacent neighbors' concern that the lots back there, those yards back there are so remarkably tiny that they want to vehemently and enthusiastically defend what they do have. And I appreciate that, and I am nothing but sympathetic. On the other hand, I do know that there is a crenellation and undulation to the rear yards back there, and the request for for a 6 foot addition is catastrophically expensive for just such a minor expansion. And I've done a little engineer's drawing on my notes here while I was thinking about it, and you'd really have to crane your neck from inside the house to appreciate that building was 6 feet deeper. In the backyard, yes, I do. There's some mass there that's going to feel different. I don't know that it blocks light and air and the sun and all the other things. I acknowledge that it will take some getting used to, and I acknowledge that it. But I do not think they are impeding that they're violating that chapter of the requirement. I do think they are seeking minimum relief, and that so all of the other criteria are met. I wish there was a compromise. I wish the applicant was here in person. I wish they had reached out and brought this application without opposition. That always makes our life a little easier. But those things being the case, I otherwise feel that the application meets the requirement. But I will wait to hear what my colleagues say on the subject.
I concur with everything you said, Mr. Zarley.
That's a first in my life for some.
Mr. Chairman, I also concur, especially that I am very sympathetic to Ms. Wyman and her comments. However, I do feel with regard to the requirement about being detrimental, this is a very tight area of the city. The buildings are very close to each other. And I agree that the 6 feet is minimal. I do agree that it would have been nice to have the applicant. However, it does seem with the testimony we received that this is going to be a residence as opposed to a Airbnb, for example. And so the financial benefit requirement is met. And with regard to the light requirement, I did find the evidence compelling that the disruption of the light is unclear for us to do an assessment. And therefore, I would move to approve this application.
You're welcome to make the motion, or I can do it, or whatever you want to do.
You can do it for a change.
Okay,
You're very
Uh,
good at it.
well, let's not get carried away here. Motion to approve the variance 2023-006 for reduction in rear yard and side and rear yard and side yard setbacks based on the staff report, the testimony and the evidence submitted today that find that the application has met all the criteria therein. And we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, the motion is approved. Variance is approved unanimously 3-0. Okay, our last variance here is 2021-006, the side yard. This is an extremely unique little enclave within the Eastport district. I was on the board when we approved the 07. I think I'm not 07. This is 07.
I think it's 03.
03. That was a much longer hearing, much hot, really, there was a lot of learning about this street, these unique conditions, these garages that are across the private road. And really, if you pay attention to a lot of the detail in there, you realize just how modest these buildings are. The interior space is 10 feet wide on the second floor. This is not an apartment in disguise. This is a room above a garage in the classic sense. And we often get requests for rooms above garages, and upon closer examination, they look more like a 3-bedroom house. This is not the case here, at least in my opinion. This is a not an inexpensive piece of work to gain a single room across the street. And that is my opinion on that one.
Mr. Chairman, I am very familiar with this street. I live close by in Eastport. And I absolutely concur with everything you said. It is a very unusual street. We did approve 03 a few years ago unanimously, and it is absolutely correct that this structure is common to Eastport and will fit into the surrounding area.
Thank you. Robert, additional comments?
No comment.
Okay, Nadine, do the honors.
I move to approve the application for variance 2021-006, that it has met all of the requirements for a variance, and in view of the evidence given in testimony as well as the staff report, I move to approve this application.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The variance is approved 3-0. Thank you very much. Returning to our agenda, all the applicants or those who are still on the line, you may begin to pester your staff at your discretion for paper. I seem to have lost my agenda. What's next?
Unfinished business.
Do we have any unfinished business for the board? Maybe just our calendar? We're back on, when are we next?
June 21st,
June 21st,
a
okay.
Wednesday.
And we have a confirmed quorum?
Well, Kimberly is not with us tonight, only Kimmers. So are all three of you planning on attending on June 21st?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, I will be out west again, usually have no trouble with joining. It's just 2 hours earlier.
I can attend also.
So I assume that, I would have to check with.
Bob didn't give any indication that he was going to make this a
Right,
habit, so.
Right. So I'm assuming that we will, even if with the three of you, we have a quorum.
Yep. So we can keep
I
it on
do
the-
plan to, because we almost had a problem tonight. I do plan to email Hillary tomorrow about the status of the appointment of our alternate. We did much better with quorums when we had an alternate as a backup, and not having an alternate puts a greater burden on the five of you to be at meetings and we almost didn't have one tonight. So I want to remind her that we're still waiting for our alternate.
Well, we're
Anybody-
grateful.
Right, if you know anybody who would like to be on the Board of Appeals,
I
please,
don't
I've
even want to be
tried.
on the Board of Appeals. What are you talking?
excuse me, Christian, what did you say?
It says 14 years. I don't even want to be on the Board of Appeals anymore.
Well, if you do know of anyone, please feel free to let us know
Okay.
so that
No,
we
I'm
can
teasing. Okay, yeah.
reach
We
out.
will, we will keep our eyes and ears peeled. Anything else before the board? Can I have a motion?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All approved. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye.